So, another on-site repair. So, excuse the wind and road noise / cars driving by. So we can see that it charges, but it's, at least the customer's description is that it wiggles too much and it doesn't function all that well. I immediately pointed him, which I'll point everyone towards this, make sure that it's not just a dirty port. I would say well over half of the time, charging port replacements end up not being charging port replacements. They just end up being dirty. But the easiest way that you can tell is a couple of things. Number one, usually if it's dirty, you'll see some of the silver, some of the metal from the charging port. Number two, there are these little grooves which sort of suck the charger in at the last moment. That's that snap that you hear. And in this case, it goes all the way in. It just isn't reliable. So I've ruled out that it's not dirty. So now we can proceed with replacing the port. Cool thing about ports is they're not very expensive. It's not an overly complicated repair. In this case, we're gonna take as much precaution as we can to not damage the screen, as this is a very expensive screen. Last thing I want to have to do is buy the customer a screen. So I'll give you a few tips on that. So it's been a while since I've done a standalone charging port replacement for an iPhone 10. I've done tons of them in the process of doing housing replacements. But as a standalone repair, it's been a while, so I left out a few things from the original intro, so this is me redoing it. In no particular order, we're going to need a Pentalobe Phillips Y000 tri-point standoff, one, possibly two tweezers, nylon spudger, opening tool, magnetic mat for the screws. Some sort of heat source helps for warming up the perimeter adhesive and anything else that, and as well as a couple of other flex cables that you're going to run into. I suggest this, but isopropyl rubbing alcohol, either 91 or 99%, to prevent the battery strips from tearing. I'll mention this later in the video. And these two aren't necessary. I don't use this in the end of the video because I was able to retain the majority of the perimeter adhesive, but you can get new perimeter adhesive. And then this is for an iPhone 8, but I'm just using this as a prop. But there are battery adhesives that you can buy. A lot of the batteries will come with them, but you can get one of these, or you can just use double-sided tape. And yeah, that's about it. So I have my port, my charging dock. This also has a couple of things. Your Taptic engine connects here, your loudspeaker connects here. This is your lower microphone, and then obviously that's the port. So if you have any of those issues, honestly, I doubt you're gonna have an issue with either one of those, but usually the Taptic engine issue is an issue with the Taptic engine, not the port. But two most common reasons are the lower microphone, which is just for talking on the phone regular, and then obviously your charging port. So not a very expensive part, $6, but it is quite a bit of labor. And like I said, there is a if you don't do it right, you can just as easily damage the screen. So the last thing that I forgot to mention as far as tools are a way to heat up the screen. Now you can just as easily use a hair dryer, unless you're me and you've done tons and tons and tons of repairs, but it's not a bad idea to, like I said, just heat up the perimeter. It definitely makes it a lot easier. You do want to take great caution So the technique that I have is twisting. It is, well, let's just say it's a lot more feasible for you to accidentally slice the screen doing this motion than it is for you to twist. So it's a way to get the screen open without using a lot of force. The next part is we need to get, there are 1, 2, and 3 brackets, so you can kind of just wiggle it out of place. Now, I mention this pretty much every video, but a good, emphasis on good, set of tools, especially the tri-wing. When I first started using tri-wing, which was when the iPhone 7 came out, or at least for me, I was stripping screws, and somebody mentioned iFixit's bit. I have not gone back. They are that good. So we have first things first. First and last thing to be connected or disconnected is always the battery. Be very careful whenever you're using metal, but just sort of lift up on the corner. We're gonna have to do 100% of these flex cables. There is a little bit of adhesive, and they're on top of a very sensitive cable, so be very gentle. If either one of those is damaged or torn, well, just say goodbye to Face ID functionality. Now, this technically isn't necessary, but it does make it a little bit easier to get the board in and out of the device, as unfortunately the board does have to come out. But lift up the adhesive, which holds down the Face ID components, is not very strong. If you want to, you just as easily can warm up the back of the device, but you don't need to use that much force. And once again, the motion that I use is twisting it, and it lifts up on the flex much more gently than sort of, using a wedge motion. Or now, this is also not something that is necessary. I just find as you have to remove the board, it is, pardon me? Okay. Make sure when you remove the SIM, there's this pin. So stick that back in, as the board has to get past that one section. Now, if you're not doing this all in one event, it's a good idea to take your Face ID and sort of set it aside, put it in a bag of some sort, as it's not something that you can replace. I mean, it's replaceable in the sense that it is a modular component, but it's not in the sense that you lose Face ID functionality, which I'm guessing most people don't want to lose Face ID functionality. So if it's just going to sit out for a few minutes, don't worry about it. But if you're in a, I don't know, dusty environment, or it's not a bad idea to do that. And I apologize if it sounds like I'm just rambling on and on and on and on and on. I mean, the purpose of these videos is I'm trying to empower the individual that's... I'm trying to empower you to the best that I can. And let's just say there are, you know, more than enough videos out there that don't go into detail. I'm trying to go into as much detail as possible. That way you not only can repair your phone, but you can repair it as close to factory as possible. As far as I'm concerned, you should put everything back together, and no one should be able to tell by looking at it that it was, as far as functionality is concerned. Okay, so I haven't done a battery. I haven't done specifically a charging port. I do housing replacements all the time for this. I haven't done specifically a charging port, so you do have to take out the battery. I'm going to amend my list, and I'm going to say it's a half decent idea to get isopropyl rubbing alcohol, either 91 or 99%. Essentially, I haven't used it on 3 of 4, but it does. I'll show you right here. Just 1 or 2 drops is really all you need, and especially around sensitive areas like this flex, it allows you. They come out a lot smoother. You're less likely to damage or tear. And we are replacing this, but still, just as a general rule, you want to avoid be as minimally invasive as possible. Now there are 2 Phillips right here. Now from here, you can gently lift up. You can also heat up this area. And the areas why isn't this coming out? There we go. Lift up, lift, lift, lift. Right above the charging port, there's a bit of adhesive. I find it easier to just warm up. All right. Lift up and out. And that's it. Now we can, if your adhesive here came up, no biggie. Most new charging ports are gonna have adhesive here and here. You always start with the charging port before, so aligning the charging port before laying down the adhesive. A trick that I've gotten in the habit of doing is plugging in a, getting ahead of myself. I'm way too excited. All right. So you want to make sure the charging port actually fits in properly. You want to hear that nice snap. You shouldn't have to fight it. It should just click right in. I don't know if you can hear that, but I certainly can. After that, make sure there's no adhesive that's left over from the last microphone. Now you don't need any on here. It'll stay in place on its own, especially considering that's what this plastic piece is for. Now the next part is pretty important. Basically this portion of the charging port has to be, if this portion of the cable is too far this way, then when you fold this over, it'll be too, basically it won't line up. So this has to be pretty tucked into this corner right here in order for it to have enough for this flex to reach all the way over across the board and snap in properly. Once again, learn from my mistakes. This happened to me enough times before I realized that that flex has to be tucked in. So much so that literally usually the first flex that I connect is the charging port, because especially in this model with as many different connectors as there is, it's annoying to think that you did it right and then have to undo all your work. So it's very crucial when doing this. These pretty much 1, 2, 3, a lot of these flexes have a tendency to get stuck under the board. It's really annoying, which is exactly the reason that I took out our front camera. It's just less cables to get past. Like I said, connect the flex first. Once that's done, you can fit those and just slowly start connecting everything. this is your Wi-Fi antenna. It has a tendency to come unconnected, so make sure before, I'll mention this again, but make sure that it's pretty much the last thing you do before you connect this. Make sure that that is snapped into place, or else I think it's Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, if I remember correctly. Don't work all that well. Taptic engine first. Sometimes doing this with a camera above my face, I don't always line up these flexes right. There. Now remember, don't tighten this one all the way, because we need to make sure that this lines up just right. Fold over the speaker flex. I specifically do it in this order for a reason, as I found this is the most what is it? I don't want to say easiest, but simple, as far as you have a less likely to redo your work due to stuff not being aligned properly. Now the next thing we need to install is the rear camera. Now whenever you remove and or reinstall the rear camera, make sure that you don't have any dust or debris that got on the underside of the, or that got on the inside of the camera lens, or else you're gonna have to take your phone apart, clean it out again. For me, it's a customer reaching out to me saying, why can't I take pictures? Obviously, if you're repairing your own, the stakes aren't nearly as high, but still, it's nice to get it right the first time. Now, there is sort of a position that make sure that your front camera, and I'll do this again, but it does go in a certain way. There's sort of you can sort of see that there's an upper and then a lower little bracket, and that's supposed to fit. The smaller piece fits underneath this screw, the larger piece fits over it. And then with this, once again, there's a little lip right here that does fit in just right. The top of this metal bracket should sit just under where the bezel sits. If it's sitting above, you could crack the screen, or you could damage the OLED in the process of reinstalling the screen. Usually I will fold the flex back into place, and I need battery. So I forgot this in the beginning. I'm probably going to make a new intro, but like I said, it's been a while since I've done just a charging port, so some of this sort of escaped my mind. Now, you don't have to. If you are ordering a battery, a lot of batteries sometimes will just come with these adhesives. It's not a bad idea to order more than one, as if you mess up ordering one, I mean, they're essentially, you know, if you need to take them off, they're a one-time use. But they're only, I don't think they're more than like $1 or so, like 50 cents. I order many at a time. So my perception of how much they cost is slightly skewed, but they're still not very expensive. If you want it done right, especially if you have any interest in repairing your own phone, it's nice to be able to take it apart again, you know, and remove the battery without too much effort. The other, which I frequently use this if the customer is just handing it off to their carrier, I will literally just use double-sided tape as, I mean, this entire thing will get me, I can't even think, probably well over 100 battery installs. So it's just pennies versus, but for, you know, if the person is holding on to the phone, I will go the extra mile and install their new battery adhesive. Now, something that I like to do is to connect the battery first before just laying the battery down, because if you get it out of position, finagling this flex to line up is much more difficult if the battery's out of position. So usually I know it fits there, then I'll lay it down. And then, like I said, make sure your battery is disconnected before reconnecting your screen. So once we're here, make sure I press left to right. This is a slightly wider flex. Sometimes if you don't get it right, I don't know, I just prefer, rather than pressing in the dead center, sometimes it doesn't connect evenly on the edges, so I prefer the left to right or right to left. Once we get here, now it's just a matter of powering on the device and testing our work. So obviously this video is about a charging port, so we want to make sure that the charging port works. And it does. Out of habit, whenever I do a battery, interacting with the battery or the charging port, I just like making sure that it charges up 1% over what it's at. So this is at 86. I just want to make sure it gets to 87. While it's doing that, we can test the loudspeaker. So that's the loudspeaker. After that, we can go to the voice memos. Test, 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 test. So the test. Exactly what we're looking for, which is you want to see it go from top to bottom. If for whatever reason it's not, make sure that your holes are free of debris. The last one is the Taptic engine, which I can't, you know, convey that through video, but we now know that our Taptic engine works, our loudspeaker works, our lower microphone works, and our charger works, and we're still at 86%, so let's leave it there for a little bit longer. Said I would mention it. I should have mentioned it maybe 5 seconds previous, but just make sure that you, once again, your Wi-Fi connector is connected properly. That's about it. Sometimes they have a tendency to go loose. Once we're here, like I said, make sure your Face ID is positioned properly. Also, make sure that you don't have any screws. So I checked this immediately before, but make sure loose screws have a tendency to get stuck on the adhesive Taptic engine or vibrator motor. But it is the vibrator motor, Taptic engine or loudspeaker. So just make sure that they don't get stuck. As if you close the, if you have a screw and then you know it's stuck somewhere, and you might misinterpret that as, oh, it's, you know, not laying flat. Let me snap down. Let me, you know, snap it into place. I have damaged more than enough screens. Typically not on that 10. It happens on other models, but it can still happen. So just make sure that you don't do that.